Hey guys, it's Will Hepburn of Will Hepburn Photography. Just wanted to make a quick little video, some little tips and techniques that you can use to boost your photography, make your photography much better. The first tip I would suggest to you guys is just really framing your shot and making sure that the composition is really good. So say in the event that you are taking someone's portrait, you want to make sure that there's no like light pole or any kind of distraction in the image that is taking away from your subject. So say like when I first started doing photography, maybe I wouldn't notice maybe if there was like a pole or some kind of distraction in the image. Maybe that was like right behind the model. And then whenever I finally got home and put them on my computer, and then I took a look and I was just like, man, now I'm gonna have to try and figure out how to Photoshop that image to where I can get that pole, you know, out from behind that model, and it's just usually what happens is those shots that you really love and really like, there's something that is either distracting in the background that you have to get rid of, or something happens and you blur the image for some reason. So anyway, that's one of my tips, is to just make sure you don't have any distractions in your background with your portraits. Another tip I would suggest is that if you are wanting to go for more of that blurred out background, what you want to do is, say your lens is a 1.8 lens, so that means that that's about as open as your aperture is going to be able to get. So if you're at 1.8, you're going to get your model in focus, but everything else is going to be blurred out in the background. So if that's your desired effect, you want to always make sure your aperture is open. If you're in a scenario where, say, like you're taking maybe like a group family shot, maybe it's at a wedding, maybe it's a family portrait session, what you want to do is you want to actually make sure that your aperture is, say, maybe like f4 or f5.6, something like that, just depending on the size of the family. Typically, the more people involved in the portrait, you want to bring your aperture up. So that's a good little tip to know. And your shutter speed should correspond with your aperture. So say a lot of times, like if you're doing a more open aperture like 1.8 or f2, you're going to want a higher shutter speed. But if you're in a scenario where maybe you're doing like f5.6 or f8, you're wanting like a lower shutter speed, like maybe like 1/160th of a second or 1/200th of a second. Just really, it's all about your balance in shooting, especially if you're shooting manual. If you're shooting auto, then you don't really have to worry about that, because the camera's figuring all that out for you as you're shooting. It's taking into account, okay, the camera shutter speed needs to be this fast, and this needs to be your aperture, and this needs to be your ISO. So now that we've kind of covered that aspect of things with the aperture and the shutter speed, the next thing we should talk about is your ISO. Typically, in most scenarios that I find myself in, I will try to keep the ISO as low as possible. So I might say do 100 ISO. And the reason I do that is you're going to get a cleaner image compared to, say, if you did 1000 ISO or 3200 ISO, because the higher the number goes up, the more likely you're going to introduce what we call noise, which is basically, it's kind of these distorted, kind of grainy pixels that are going to come into your image. And you can always take it into Lightroom or Photoshop and get rid of those pixelated little dots from the noise, but it can be a pain to have to deal with, because oftentimes when you're removing the grain, you're actually softening the image, so you're kind of taking some of the sharpness out of the image. So best case scenario is definitely to make sure your ISO is as low as possible. So anyway, these were just a couple tips that I had for you guys today, and I really just wanted to have some content I could put up on my YouTube, and I'm trying to get to where I can do this more often, more frequently, so that I can just keep teaching you guys and showing you guys new videos, and hopefully bring you guys out on a couple photo shoots that I have, and show you guys how I set my lighting up, how I set my camera settings, and all that fun stuff. So anyway, I hope you guys have a great rest of your weekend, and I will talk to y'all soon.